not every project we do here at August Oak Woodworks is a large, complicated, multi-week build kind of thing. This particular one came from a client that I've done a lot of work with through the last few years. She had a customer of hers that needed an island, not an island, needed a hood built for her stovetop. And I guess they just couldn't find exactly what they were looking for, and so she thought to call me. So, because it was just one piece, I was able to squeeze it in a very short amount of time for her, which made her happy, and I'll get plenty more work from her in the future, so it works out good for me. So this cabinet it just has a simple slope. There's not a lot of complexity. The sides aren't also sloped in. It's just one slope in the front, and it's going to get painted when it's all said and done. So I was able to make it in such a way that I could build it all at once. It didn't have to be done in a bunch of stages. So what I first had to do is figure out what my angles were for my face and my sides and get that worked out. And then work in a series of cuts so that everything would go together and be cut correctly when it was all said and done. The trickiest part with working with angles is making sure you're cutting from the correct side of the plywood so that your angle is sloping the right way and all that sort of stuff. But I figured it out. I've got some 45 degrees on the outside left and outside right. And then I've got I want to say it's a 3.6 degree in the front slope, and the top piece had a 7.1 degree. So all these seem minor, but if you get them right, it makes everything just come together really nice and clean. Now, I don't know if you'll notice or not, but all of my cuts, anytime I'm cutting, say, a 45 degree on my table saw, I'll usually rough cut it out a little bit wider, and then I'll come back and I'll do a final cleanup cut. That just gives the angle a little bit better chance of being clean. Here I'm using my track saw to cut the 45 degrees on the sides. I was going to set up a whole table saw sled, and it just became too complicated. So this face piece I left a little bit large so that I could get the angle to match up correctly and then just cut it down to width later, which is what I've done here. Anytime you can bring the pieces together and make them fit, that's always going to work better than just doing it by measurements alone, because sometimes it doesn't always work exactly the way you hoped. So the best way, and this isn't my trick, this is just an old trick, but the best way to get any kind of angled joint to line up is to tape it with just blue tape. It works as an excellent clamp. It kind of makes a hinge, keeps things pretty flat, and it worked really well in this case too. So I've got some glue spread out in here, and it makes a big mess, but I don't really care because this is what we're looking at right now is the inside of the hood, which is going to be completely unseen once the actual vent unit itself is installed. So while a little bit tricky, I had some help in the shop, so it made it easy enough. I just had to make sure to get glue on everything, get my little paintbrushy thing to spread it out because I don't have any other fasteners going in these joints. It's just glue, which is more than strong enough. But it means I've got to kind of work quick. So you see the front now, it's got that on the blue tape, it's hinged at the it's a 7.1 degree angle, but that comes together and it's a 45 degree on all outside edges. The reason for this is we don't want to see any plywood edge when it's all said and done. That even if you're painting, no matter how much filler you put on it, you're always going to see that it's a plywood edge. So we do it to clean it up this way. These little butterfly clamp things are pretty cool. They're just kind of a spring clamp thing that does a pretty good job of holding a joint like this together without making a big mess. Now inside here I'm just building in some support to hold the actual metal unit that's going up inside of it. I'm just going off the dimensions that I've been given. The unit itself is going to get screwed into these when it's all said and done, and there's plenty of play, but that's what these are for. Behind there, there's some screws. Those are called pocket hole screws. They're going in. They're more than strong enough for what this application is for. This is the back of the unit now. I've got it in the other side of my shop. And that, what I'm putting in there is just a brace. That's what's going to actually secure it to the wall. I always like to staple or nail them in place before I put my pocket hole screws. That kind of keeps it from shifting around on me. And that's generally what it's going to be. I've got another brace I put in later down below. But here I fill the very edge. Those little clamps, they leave a little bit of a divot, and because they're pokey, so I like to fill that. I also like to fill any of the seams, even if it doesn't look like it's open. I like to still get some filler in there. That way, when I sand it, I don't have any little voids that pop up later. Everything gets nice and cleaned, and I don't have to come back to it. The top is a little bit long as well, which is fine because I'm going to get my track saw out and just trim this off. Normally I've got this thing hooked up to my vacuum, but I was doing this while the other guys was working and I didn't want to take things from them, so I just made it dusty in there. After cleaning off the little nibs that I left there, I went ahead and sanded everything up. Got it all ready, cleaned up all the edges, all the glue got sanded off. This angle here, I made sure I tried not to roll that over. I just sanded it out flat so that it made a clean transition line and comes out looking good. When that's done, you can see here the underside of the hood still looks like plywood. So I'm going to glue on some real thin strips of wood. That's called edge banding. It is solid wood. It's just getting glued on real thin. And that will hide the plywood edges. This is what I've got here. It's heat activated. It's what makes the glue. There's glue already on the backs of these strips, and the iron heats it up, reactivates the glue, makes it nice and sticky, and then cools again real quickly. So here it is kind of in the shop, just done and as is, ready to go. And the next shot is just there in person. The kitchen obviously isn't in yet. They've got a lot of work to do, but they've got a hood and they can build around it now. So thanks for watching. Bye.